When you got a couple of seconds. Okay, everybody. I hope everybody's doing well. We're going to do another task sheet for my automatic transmission class, and this one is task sheet C685, and it is inspecting, measuring, cleaning a valve body. In this case, we're doing the 4R70W valve body for the transmission that we do in class. And I'm going to give you some specifications for it. They may be a little different. I'm going to give you the field specifications, but they're probably a little different than what we do in the classroom. You got to remember, these things are taken apart a lot of times, so we're going to back off on the specs just a bit. But I'll give you the pretty much the factory specs. So on the disassembly of the valve body, I'm going to be straight up with you. In the field, you might get a transmission that comes in with a broken component. Broken low reverse band, a broken overdrive band, something like that. And a lot of times the pan will be just spotless, depending on the miles of the car. Sometimes this valve body assembly gets put over to the side. I may replace the gaskets on it, and I'm going to ship it. It was working good until something snapped. If you're lucky, sometimes that comes in. But in this case, I'm going to treat it like normal wear, and we're going to take this apart and see what we got to do to service the valve body. So in this case, I'm going to pull off the this circuit board right here. This is something Ford went. I like this design here. They had a loose wiring harness for a while, but then later they went to this thing, and I think they went back to the wiring harness itself. But this has all your circuitry in it for your shift solenoids, your A and B shift solenoids, and your TCC, your lockup solenoid, and then for the pressure control solenoid that's in the case over here. And this hooks up to the case pass-through for the main harness. So I'm going to set that aside. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and pull the solenoids off just to get them out of the way. And there's one bolt that holds them in. And these are 10 millimeter head bolts and 8 millimeter body. So I'm going to set those aside. Let me set this torque up just a little bit here. So I'll go ahead and pull the solenoids off. And these are strictly on-off solenoids. They do have a couple of small O-rings. Normal overhaul, if you have the equipment to check these out under heat and under pressure, that's great. You'll know whether they work. You can ohm check them, but that doesn't tell you how they work in operating conditions. So I'm going to set those aside, and you can change the O-rings. And same thing with the pressure control solenoid. It has a couple of O-rings on there. So I'll set those over there. Of course, right here is the manual valve. I'm going to leave that in. We talked about that when we talked about the valves and such, the hydraulic portion of the transmission. So I'll leave that manual valve in there. This is one you actually do control with the shift lever. Now, this plate's going to come off. You can see a lot of 10 millimeter heads in this plate right here. I'm going to pull all these out. Whoops. Kind of got tight on me there. Now, these last two bolts that I'm pulling out right here, these are kind of special type bolts. These are the alignment bolts. And I will show you these. They're different than the rest. The rest are just short, holding this steel plate onto the valve body. It's to stiffen it up. This one right here, though, you'll see these things here. And you see they've got these little alignment tips on them. These extend all the way through the valve body and into the case to line up the valve body up to the case, get all the pressure ports lined up. Thing is, the added benefit is these also line up your plates, your gaskets, your separator plates, everything. So I'll show you the installation sequence on those. I'm going to lift up this plate right here, and you notice we have a pretty substantial gasket under this thing. It's pretty thick. It's just shy of a cardboard box. This is to seal between this plate and the valve body. Now, regular overhaul, you would change this out. This is a new gasket. It's just never been run, so it's got some indentions on it, but I'm okay with that. On this plate, you have a large valve body surface area. So in the old AOD, you had a lot of bolts holding this on, but we don't have so many valves as we did on the AOD. So came out with this plate right here, Ford did, and this acts like a kind of a reinforcement to seal all these ports right here. I usually flat file these when I was in the field. I'd flat file them with a file and make sure that I don't have any cross leaks. I'd get that as flat as I could. So I'll set that aside for right now. Okay, so that's it. That's it for this side here. I'm going to flip it over. And now you see that I have a gasket that is going to go up against the case, between the case and the valve body. So I'm going to lift this gasket off right here. And like I said, these are new gaskets, so I'm just going to set them aside. But you make sure that when you match them up, I'll show you how you match up a new one. You make sure it's not covering any holes. But this one's in good shape, so I'll lay it again over there to the side. Now, this is my spacer plate. There are some hold down plates on it, and if you'll notice, they're located where my low reverse band servo is, and this one right here with my overdrive band servo. These seal that circuit. So I'm going to pull those off. And then there's one right down here in this corner right here. Alright, now I'm going to take this plate and, whoops, let me get these out of the way. Now you'll see these things here, there's a pattern to these holes, so they'll go on one direction. As long as you got this side down, these are the tracks. This is just delivering oil to the various circuits right here that you can see. Let me get out of the shadow here a little bit. Let's see if we get some light on this. Hey, it looks a little better right there. Okay, so I got these tracks right here, same thing. So we're going to have the smooth side up on these. I'm going to try to get out of the light here. I think I keep blocking the light here. All right, now, on the spacer plate, I'm going to roll this over. See, we have a corresponding gasket to the bottom side. No holes to cover up the hold-down plates over there. So I'll put that aside. So on the spacer plate, if you notice these little tiny holes right here, and pretty small. There's various ones, various sizes. Some of them you can barely see. They look more like a fly speck or something. But these are orifices, and these are used to control fluid pressure and also the rate of flow in some of these passages to control how fast the clutch plate applies or how quickly a band applies. So that's all they're for. They're calibrated restriction. Other than that, I think we're okay. I'm going to put these aside. Oh, one thing you want to check on this plate. Right on this side here, we had the two hold-down plates. And this one here, there used to be a plate on the earlier models. And this little thing, this little tip right there is where the cover for the third accumulator that we pulled out would hit. That we did on the teardown, and the little tip of this cover right there hits right in the center, and you can almost see just a little indentation. If you can feel it, that one's okay, but eventually what happens over a lot of years or a lot of miles, whichever comes first, is this plate keeps hitting the spacer plate, and eventually it'll make a dent in it and it starts to wear. You could have a potential leak in that circuit right there, so you got to watch. These are cheap to replace, so if you ever have to replace it, don't hesitate. It's going to save your overhaul. Now, you can see all our little worm tracks, I guess for lack of a better word. We have 8 check balls in this valve body, and we got a couple of other little components. Main one right here, there's a drain back valve in this corner right here. I don't know if you can see that, and I'm going to pull it out. And this is it's a torque converter drain back valve. Keeps the torque converter, keeps it charged up when the car might sit 2 or 3 days. The fluid doesn't drip down the torque converter, because then you start it up, and you may be one of the people that puts it right in gear, or the customer may be, and there's going to be a delay on engagement. Of course, they're sitting there revving it up. It could do some damage when that thing engages. So this is a torque converter drain back. We'll put that right there. And over here, we have a plastic framework with a nylon mesh screen in it, and that's to filter out for the shift solenoids and the pressure control and your lockup solenoids. Keeps any trash out of them. So we'll put that down there. And now we got 8 check balls. And I don't know, maybe you've already found them here, but there's one here. There's 2, 3, 4, and there's one in a bathtub right here. 5, that's called a shuttle ball. 6, 7, and 8 right here. And we'll just take those things, we'll put them on the rack so they don't take off running like cockroaches there. Alright, everything's out. So of course we had the manual valve that I mentioned earlier. Over here we have our pressure regulator valve. We've mentioned that when we talked about the hydraulics. One thing you might want to check on the pressure regulator valve, you can see I have a retainer in there that holds the pressure regulator valve. I'm going to set that down. Here comes the pressure regulator lineup. And what you do is you just kind of take your scribe and stick it in there and turn it, and that kind of works the valve out of the bore. You don't really want to pry on them too much because they are an aluminum valve, and you can damage them. You know, you get a little nick on them, and then that's the potential for them to hang up. So I'll get it to the end, and this is my pressure regulator valve. And it's got a nice smooth surface. This is an aluminum valve, but it looks different. It's got an anodized finish on it. That's to make it hard so it doesn't gall up inside this aluminum bore. And you can see how smooth the finish is. And you get right here. Let me work around to the camera. I don't know if you can see right there. You can see like a wear pattern, right? You can see a wear pattern right there on the edge. And that's the finish coming off of there, but that means this valve has been wearing on one side of that bore because of the pressure. You can get aftermarket replacements for these valves, and they're made out of a different material, and they have slots cut around them, grooves to equalize the pressure, and they work a lot better. So if you start getting one in that shape, you might think about changing it. You guys remember, if your pressure falls off, like we spoke about on the pump, if you lose line pressure, you run a big risk of not only bad lube, but lack of pressure to your bands and your clutches when you need it the most, and then you're really in trouble. This is my reverse boost sleeve. This is one that comes on when you put it in reverse. I need some extra pressure for that big low reverse band to apply. I'm going to push this in here, try to do it without letting it fly off here. And there you go. I got my retainer in right there, and we're good. So that's one of the ones you'd want to check or replace, depends on how it looks like. Next one over here, the way I normally check a valve is this valve right here. This is my regulator apply valve. This is where my shift solenoids go right here, and then my lockup solenoid right next to them in this port. This right here is regulator apply. This is the fluid that goes to the solenoid regulator apply. And it regulates, just like it says, the fluid going to the solenoids. Make sure that they don't have an overwhelming amount of fluid and that they have just the right amount. If it was to hang up, depending on where it hangs up, you may have too much fluid, and you can get some erratic shifts, harsh shifts, stuff like that. That, and then let's see over here, what is it, fourth apply? Can't remember. I think it's this. I think this is my fourth overdrive regulator. OD regulator valve. I make sure that's flowing good. I believe that's the right one here. So I don't have my chart with me, but either way, what I do is I check all the valves and then make sure that they snap back so all the valves are free. You can see them snapping back there. So we're good on this one here. Normally we're doing pretty good in the classroom. Very rarely you get one that's all stuck, and then it's kind of a learning curve. So we're going to do, we've checked that and everything's good. Now what you can do in the field, especially a commercial account, you're doing a 2-year warranty or whatever, you can flat file these valve bodies. Get a fine file, big one, and you go across and you will see high spots on these things. You flatten it out, makes it good, seals up real good, and then you wash it out, get all that filings out of it and stuff. Make sure it's all free and clear, and should have a good valve body on your hands. So I'm going to reinstall these here. So we're going to put all the check balls. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 right there. And then I'm going to put my screen back in over here. And this screen goes in right there at that angle. And then my drain back valve down here in the corner. Now, if you're replacing the gaskets, you take your gasket, you get your plate, you want to put the gasket, this one's going to go against the valve body here. I would put the gasket on the plate, and then I would look to see and make sure that I don't have any holes covered up. I'd be looking around and say, yeah, it looks good. I don't have anything blocked. Everything looks good from this side. So I'm ready to go back on with this guy here. I'll put it on like that. Lay it on there, kind of even it up a little bit. Now at this point, I'm not going to put this other gasket on. It doesn't do me any good right now. Okay, so I'm going to lay it down. I'm going to get these hold down plates, seal that circuit up there. I'm going to put in a couple of these guys. And I'll get these down. And what I do, this is my sequence on these guys. Some people do this differently. You come up with the same result, but what I do, you remember we got those hold down bolts on the other side lining everything up. Let's see, we're going to look at this. You got the holes lined up in a certain way right there. And once we get these in, these are going to get torqued, just not right at this second. What I'm going to do with these, I'm going to put these in finger tight. Alright, so now I've got these down. So I'm going to flip this. Now this plate is on, and the reason I do that is just to keep all the little check balls from falling out of the pockets. I'm going to flip it over, and at this point I will get my hold down plate and my new gasket, and I would put the gasket on. Then I would get my hold down plate, drop that guy on there. Now I'm going to get those two alignment pins. I'm going to drop them in. They only go, whoops, they only go in two certain holes. One's right here on the end. That one's right there, just shy of the end, right there in the middle. And just to speed this up, I'm going to run these down just a bit, just past finger tight right there. Just like that. And now that has lined up the plate, the gasket, valve body, the other gasket, and the spacer plate. It's lined all three of them up, or all four of them up rather, excuse me. And that eliminates a lot of guesswork. And I think it works out good because of this design on this valve body. Some of you guys that have built out there in the field will know, like the 460E and any of the GMs, really you had to use dowel pins in the case and then put everything on separately. That way you knew everything was lined up. Put this here, and I got one more for my solenoids. I'll go ahead and put those on right now. Now just make this a quicker process. You run these down. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and torque these right now while we're looking at them. Whoops, left one off here. Grab this socket over here. And remember, guys, I was talking about these right here. I think your normal torque sequence on these things, you're probably looking at right at 100 inch-pounds, which is just a little bit over 8 foot-pounds. It's not much, so I go about 100 inch-pounds on this thing, because that's about as low as I can get on this torque wrench. And so we just listen for the click. There we go. Hear the beep. All right. So what I'm going to do here is shorten this up a little bit. Well, we're almost done. What the heck, you know? You only live once. We'll use it all up on this torque sequence here. Let's see. alignment. That was a quickie. Yeah, I think. Alright, now I can flip it over. Everything's torqued. And now I can torque these right here, and that will finish me up. Whoop. So I think I got that might be set a little bit higher than 10 foot-pounds, but I'm okay. I think I'm about a foot-pound over here. That one I didn't put in too tight, did I? Or too tight. That one. And the last one, last but not least. Here, let me run that guy down. Alright, shut this off here. Oh, come on. Always turn your torque wrench off and take the batteries out if you got one of those digital jobs. Now I put on the, you can see where these alignment pins are sticking up right there. That lines it up with the case. I like this design on here. Pretty nice. Takes a little bit of the guesswork out of it. You would put that gasket on there. Again, you would match it up, make sure the holes all are open. And I usually, normally I reserve this harness until the last, but I throw it on there just for safekeeping. Okay, guys, and that is the 4R70 valve body. We talked about the spacers, the brackets, the plates, orifices, replace the balls, put them in order. And anyway, we torque it. The reason we torque it, last note, is if you just guess at it and you don't torque this valve body tight enough, then with a little bit of wear, some mileage, this aluminum flexes, it warps, so does the case. You want to flat file the case too. What you wind up with is cross leaks between the valve body and the case. And then you have a couple of gears. You got a gear coming on when it's not supposed to. That's kind of the reasoning behind this plate right here. Pressure loss, so you start suffering from erratic shifts and burnt holding devices, clutches, bands, what have you. If you over tighten it, you distort the valve body, you start locking valves down. So you want to go with the torque specs. They paid some guy a lot of money to go to school and get his degree in engineering to figure out the torque specs, so we'll let him earn his money there. But don't second guess it. Always torque it back, and you should have a long, successful service out of the valve body and the rest of the transmission. So this will answer all your questions on the task sheet 685, and I will publish this for y'all so you can get that done, and I will see y'all in the Zoom meeting and the next time we meet for class. And everybody be good, take care.